Anything that involves putting an image on a surface is difficult, because the first thing that you have to do, and the last thing most of us are trained to do, is to start visualizing before, because you can't draw a picture of something you haven't visualized in your mind yet, because you don't know what you're going to draw a picture of. So from all the movies we've seen, the books we've read, actual events that we've witnessed, we need to start, if we don't already, start remembering details about those and use what you see in film, because these directors, the directors of photography and these things, are so good. You can get an amazing amount of information out of this. See what they like, what they don't like, what they do, what they don't do. So this is very complicated, and you're just going to have to bite it off a piece at a time. You know, you don't become a great chef, you know, overnight. You start out with some of the simpler things. Keep your work simple. Concentrate on drawing quickly, briskly, and with some confidence in a simple way. Dark side, light side. Keep it simple, and just draw constantly when you're sitting in the morning, having your cup of coffee, tea, or whatever. Practice drawing boxes and simple shapes from different directions, casting shadows with a lit side and a dark side and a medium side. And do that until you can do it in your sleep. Okay, we have the 4 panels on the pad here, and we're going to say they're all identical drawings, and we're going to show you how much you can change the character of this by changing the lighting. So with this first example, I'm going to start by putting a very pale tone here on these back buildings, the skyscrapers in the distance, and when I do those, I'm going to start dark at the top, and when I say dark, I mean this light value, going to almost completely white. So I'm going to put just a tiny little bit of tone in there and let it go at that, all right? Then I'm going to, I'll put a little darker value on the side of this building back here, and a little darker yet on the one, well, wait a minute, let's cast a shadow on that. No, that's okay. Let's leave it alone. It'll be all right. And I'm missing a little line here for the edge of the building. Okay, and a little tone here. So we're going to have light coming from over here, coming into the picture on this one. So these sides of the buildings are not going to be dark, but they're not going to be light either. They're kind of half lit over here. And we'll start here up at the top with a little darker value. Keep that. So you see the charm of a transition there. Now we have a little chain link fence in here that runs right in there in all of these pictures, and what we're going to do is this is what I'm going to show you what to do with the chain link. You can do this by hand, or you can do it with a straight edge if you would prefer. So I'll show you what I mean by, these are not carefully drawn lines. They're just, and I didn't do them evenly spaced. I skipped some periodically, and I'm going to do the same thing going this way. And the whole look of the fence will be better for having been kind of just sketched in, as it were. And then I'll put just a little tiny bit of tone on it. Okay, and then we're in pretty good shape there. We know that it's going to be dark under the car, so let's do that first of all. And then we're going to have a shadow, because the light's coming from over that away. It's shooting across the street. We're going to put a shadow in here. We'll take that off. It's going to be dark inside the trunk. trunk's just kicked open a little bit. This is an abandoned car, mind you. And we'll get a little darkness inside the car, not too much. And we'll run a dark shadow across the door of the car right here. Okay, and we'll get a little bit of dark wheel well and there. Okay, now the biggie is going to be this shot of shadow from a building that's out of the frame here. We'll go to the same vanishing point for reference is right there. And we'll do that, and then I will this is kind of a shorthand way of filling in big blocks of tone really fast. Let's put an angled shadow on this building, which is from some connector building between these, the one that's casting this shadow and that one. So back in there a little ways, there's another loading dock and a building facade behind it and all. And we'll put a little shadow across this sign, just a little slice across there. And then we'll just take our finger and rub a little tone in there. And along there as well. So I'll make sure this is nice and toasty dark, because this is our theme shadow, as it were. Okay. And I'm going to hit this center line a little harder so you can read it for sure. Okay, we're going to put some shadow on this side of this building, because this one's clearly facing away from the sun. And we'll darken in the windows a bit. A couple of stripes. Working with the side of the pencil seems to give you more effective pencil sketches than working with the point. Doesn't mean you never use the point, but I seldom use it. Okay, and this side is facing away from the sun as well, so we'll darken that one in too. And then we'll put a little, we're going to get a little less dark down here on these buildings, and we'll fill these two little figures in with dark since they're standing in the shadow of this one building. And now we have to get a narrow strip of dark across here from this building. So get that in the picture. And we'll put a little strip of shadow along where the curb is, and we'll darken the curb ever so slightly. Hit this line a little bit more to harden it up. Go up here, clean that little dirty spot out. Clean this little dirty spot out here. We'll put a last little dark on the road. Okay, now let's get the back side of this car. We're gonna, and we'll put a little bit of darkness, a little bit of value on that. Mainly the lower back portion of the car. I'm going to darken this up a little bit as it comes down. And I think maybe I'll darken this as well, just a little bit at the top. So we get a little bit of gradation coming down. We can darken up a couple of these windows in here. Not all of them. Maybe on some of them just half to make it a bit more interesting. And we're going to have some deep, probably some fairly deep shadow underneath this awning. Okay, and we got a couple of little shadows from these pieces of newspaper and junk blowing across the street here. And we're going to put a little dark edge on the door. And I think we'll want to come in here and darken in these windows on the front of this store. that's behind. And let's see, is there anything else we need to do with this little puppy? I'm gonna hit these street poles a little harder. And all right, I think that one's pretty much done. Okay, now we'll move on to the next one. And the next one has some light coming in from the opposite direction, from this direction. Okay, so now we're going to start out with this side of this building is no longer light. It's now in half light. So but since this tilts away from the building, we'll put a little bit of value on it as well. It's not catching as much sunlight as the rest. We're going to put a diagonal shadow across the ground here. Just a little bit of an angle. Many times you're better off to do a couple of horizontal strips to get these little skinny spots shaded in. Works a little bit better. You're looking for kind of a crisp execution of this. So you don't want it to look like you worked real hard at it. You don't want it to make it look like finished art, because it certainly isn't. But you want to make it look just good enough where somebody'd say, yeah, I like the idea really well. Looks good. Let's do it. Okay, and then we'll darken that side of the car. Inside the trunk again, that always gets dark. No way light gets in there. Okay, and let's see, let's put a little value on the fence. And then we'll come back and you see what I'm doing is I'm just doing a stroke like that, not bending the individual fingers. You're just bending the whole group and you get a lot crisper stroke, and it's more effective. Okay, get some shadow on this side of the building here. Yeah, you can change the whole complexion of something by changing where the sun is coming from. It's absolutely shocking and amazing how cool it works. Changes the whole deal. Put a little partial shadow from this building cast on this one. So we'll get a little shadow going down there. A little bit of dark on the front again. All these fronts are going to get darkened. So you have to just put on your hat. If it really comes down to it, you can draw a little plan view on a piece of note paper that shows where the street is, where the sun's coming from, and you draw a bunch of parallel lines indicating the direction from where the sun is going, and shade them in real quickly, and you can have yourself a road map for how the whole thing works. So it's not really, it may at some times look like some kind of incredible intuition that you simply don't possess, but it really isn't that magical. Things are either facing the light, half facing the light, or not facing the light at all. And so they will all shade out accordingly. Get a little shadow underneath there. And we're going to, since the light's coming from sort of at a little bit of an angle, we'll cast a shadow down for the shadow underneath this little square lid awning that's on this one building. And under here we'll do something about like that, I think. So now we're going to add a little bit of tone underneath this awning. A little bit of shadow that it's casting, so that'll look good. Let's see. I'm going to darken up these weeds over here instead of keeping them light, just to add a little interest. Go back and reinforce these edges so that we get good solid borders on here. No confusion. Makes it a little easier to put the tone in too when you keep them solid. Okay, I'm going to, let's see, I'm going to put a little bit of tone in the sky here. then I'll just kind of rub it out to. It's much easier than trying to render it with a pencil. It looks a lot better anyway. I'm going to go back in now, and these buildings, this is if, you know, there are situations where there's a cloud, puffy clouds in the sky, and you can actually end up with certain parts of an area covered in shadow and other parts in full sun. We're going to do that right now. We're still going to do dark to light, but these buildings, instead of being light like they were in the last one, are going to be a good bit darker. Okay, got that. Put a little dark on the side of that building, and gonna just kind of do some little subtle lines on these buildings to make sure that they stay clear in silhouette. So we've got that. Let's see, I'm going to darken this just a bit more. Again, I'm going to darken the inside of this door. Leave the edge lit, that little edge there. I want that to be catching a little bit of light. It's not a big deal, but every little sparkle counts. You know, they all add their weight into the thing. I can put a little bit of gray into the roadway there just by rubbing my finger on it. Looks a little better, makes these whites read a bit brighter. I put a couple of dark vertical lines into the windows. Just do the bottom. They're just reflecting what's across the street, so I can't get too bold, or they would be, because the sun's coming from that direction. The part that's not facing a building, reflecting a building, would be reflecting the bright sky. So got to be kind of careful there. I'm going to put a couple of more little darks out into the street there. And I'm going to darken up this one a bit more, make that a little bit more dynamic. So we're just going to darken it up to make sure we get a nice, crisp, clear, dark shadow there. I'm going to put a little bit of shadow from that fence. Guess I'm probably, that little bit of extra dark there helps a little tiny bit. Okay, so now I'll go back and touch this up just a little tiny bit and get this shadow as dark as the other one, because they're basically doing the same functional thing. So sometimes this stuff doesn't erase quite as good as you wish, but all right. Maybe one little improvement. Probably let's make this tiny bit darker up at the top, and we'll crisp up that line there. Hit the poles a little bit. Okay, so now we've got two different lighting situations on the same thing. Now I'm going to I'll go down here and do this one next, and this one's going to be let's see, this one's going to have about the same amount of light as that building did. Our shadow is going to change though on this one from being straight across to shining down, the light's going down the street more on this one. So we'll hopefully see a good difference. Okay.
these dark swaths across here. Working with these nice, very soft pencils, you can get just some really nice, luscious darks that are really fun to work with. On this one, we're just going to have a little sliver of light catching on the car, and the rest of it's going to be in shadow. So it's going to be full, almost completely in shadow in this particular item, and all of the sides of these buildings are going to be relatively dark, so we'll get that in. Another shadow from the building. Got a little sloppy there. Once you get used to working with a little straight edge like this, you find it pretty difficult to go back to the old way of doing things. Okay. Right, and we're pretty much always going to let this get a little light at the end of the street, so that there's a little kind of a soft landing spot down there for any building, so that it kind of gets lost in the haze. It seems to make a little bit better look than super lighting the end of the street, seems to help. Okay, and we're going to put a little bit of tone on the side of this building, and down here, and down here. And we've got the same dark shadow, but this time our shadow is going to drop at a little bit more severe angle. And this one will do the same thing. Awning. All right. And we're going to have a couple of shadows across the street down here. It looks similar to that, but now we see the foreground has been more dropped into darkness than in that one. So we have it's a pretty substantial change. You get these darks under the car established. Those are really, really important. Okay. And okay, and just our traditional, typical little bit of extra dark up at the top. Put a little bit of couple of brick lines into that just for laughs. See how that works. Okay. Keep the whole workspace cleaned up so that we don't look too shabby. And we'll go back and get our strong borders on here. Just seems to make the whole thing look more finished. Okay. All right. Got a little bit of dirt crept in there while we weren't looking. Pencil's kind of known to be kind of a messy little medium. On this last one now, the last of these four, we're going to darken up the sky. I'll put a little strip of tone across here to give me an edge to work to. And I'll start to put in a little darker sky in this one. This is the first time we've used a darker sky, so should make a big difference. We'll let it get, the dark sky get a little lighter as it goes down to the ground. And again, you don't have to be super duper perfect in the rendering of this stuff to make it work. What you want to do is you want to keep your pencil work as random enough where it doesn't look like it needs to get finished. And that's kind of the trick. You want uniformly casual. And that's kind of the look that you're generally speaking you're after for the whole thing at this level. Okay, and I'm going to put some, just to kind of clean up the sky a little bit, I'm going to put some little vertical stripes in it just to keep it, pull all those values together for me so that nothing looks too shabby. This is going to be a radical departure now. We are going to really get dark here. Get a nice solid line across the top that I can pull some darks away from. Okay, we're getting it. Okay. And went over the line there a little bit. You have to do a little quick erasing every now and again to clean things up. Where the chain link fence is on this particular shading exercise, I'm going to leave it a little bit lighter where the chain is. Because just as it will make things darker against a light background, chain link will also be lighter against a dark background. So kind of have to remember that. Okay. These buildings now downtown have now been super illuminated, and instead of being in various states of shadow, they are now the brightest things in the picture. And we're going to drop a kneaded eraser stroke to let that fact shine on the paving in the foreground, in the shadows. Okay, I think that wants to stay about like that. This one's going to get a little tone, and this one's going to get a little tone. And we'll get this one a little darker. And I'll go back and I'll put the chain link in. Okay, dark under the car as usual, and dark in the trunk as usual. Put a little dark on the tail lights as well, and maybe just kind of generally darken up the back end of it here a little bit. Put a little dark in the wheel well, a little dark on the tire, and I'm going to add a little bit of darkness in this corner here. All right, and now go back and hit this one more dark stroke. Get that side of the building to really be in shadow. So we have something in this last picture which probably is akin to early morning first light, something like that, where the parts of something get hit by morning light and other parts don't quite get hit by it. Get these deep shadowed portions a little bit more darkened up. Okay, I think we're just about there with this one. Just reinforce a couple of lines on here to make sure they read. Sometimes when you go over them with pencil, they start to get lost after a bit. Left a little light out on that sign there so it can read just a bit. And we'll get a couple of these windows dark. And the storefront behind here. Okay, basically that's it for that, and you can see the radical difference between the 4 different views. We've decided who's going to be in shadow and who isn't, and it switches around and it changes a bit. And there are probably 10 more options that you could probably put into this picture if you really taxed your brain on it. So this one is our finished valuation studies, 4 valuation studies on this particular project.